I must say, I'm obsessed with this story, right? This is the tennis player. He's the Australian Open champion. We know he's very sceptical about the vaccine. It's pretty much suspected he hasn't had it. Well, we know he hasn't had it. The question is whether he's been given
a medical exemption
because they've got to get him into Australia because they want him in the tournament. Yasmin, this is really interesting, isn't it?
It's shocking. It's so wrong. Australians have done so much and have tolerated and put up with so many restrictions in order to keep this virus out and under control. And what? Because this guy plays good tennis, he can, what he's going to do is influence how many people into thinking it's okay not to take the vaccine.
What do you think about it, Storm?
Well, do you know what? They've said that he's got a medical exemption, and I think, to be honest, we can have our suspicions, but I think we have to take that at face value. We don't really have a right to know his medical history or what his exemptions are. If he does have a medical exemption, then we're just going to have to go with it. I think there's lots of sportsmen out there without vaccines that are being able to play this sport.
No. We don't have to go with it. I think we can question it like hell. Less than half of Serbians have been vaccinated. There is a big Eastern Europe thing going on.
But also, there might be a problem. He might have been made exempt from this, but will he get into Australia? Will they stop him at the border?
There's now been another twist. He landed in Australia yesterday afternoon. He was denied entry after an extraordinary mix-up with his visa application. His team applied for a visa that doesn't support exemption on medical grounds, and he's reportedly going to be deported later today.
No one is above any kind of law in any country, and Australia have made it very clear where they stand when it comes to having your vaccination. I would really like to hear from Novak to find out exactly what is going on. He could quite easily release a press statement to explain his situation. Until he doesn't, everyone's just going to think, well, he doesn't want the vaccine. He thinks he can continue to compete. So that means I don't need to get vaccinated. And Andrew's absolutely right. We need to send a clear message to the world that this vaccination works, that we all need to encourage each other to do this. And if you're a sports personality, if you're a celebrity, if you're in the public eye, then we do absolutely have a responsibility to give the right scientific information, and that is that this vaccination is important and it's needed and it works.
Nobody is more cynical than me, possibly apart from you and Shay and Andrew. We all know that if you've got money and you've got power and you've got privilege, you can make things happen. The charge of hypocrisy against Novak Djokovic may well stand. The reason we hated the Downing Street party is because we're being told one thing by those people and then they're doing another. We hate that. We're a nation that likes to queue. Australia is the same. We hate people who push in. We feel like Novak is gaining an unfair advantage. If that's the case, then fair enough. But, if they're changing the rules mid-game, then that is not fair enough. Is he being treated properly? There were 26 applications for the Australian Open for this medical exemption. It was all anonymous and name blind by an independent panel. Let's get to the bottom of that. Who are the other players? Are we to understand everybody's medical records are now to be published for everybody to see? Or is the COVID-19 vaccination just an exception? These are very big questions going forward.
What about that, Benjamin? If you test Djokovic every day, you're home clear anyway.
I think the question, it's good that, they will have to be negative. Clearly, the testing is really important. But what we're talking about here is that if he tested positive, he could potentially get seriously ill. And in the case of Djokovic, this is more about, I think, a right to national borders. Australia doesn't want to have a hospital bed filled with a foreigner who refused the vaccine. And I think Australians are quite reasonably able to refuse someone like that for a sports tournament or for anything else.
Let's talk, if we can, to a Serb journalist who does a lot of sports reporting, Sasha Osmo, in Serbia, in Belgrade. And I know a lot of Serbs very angry about this, Sasha.
Yes, it's a mixture of disappointment and anger. As I've stated numerous times in the past few days, everything would be all right if, in case Djokovic's application for exemption has been rejected right away before him boarding the plane. But I don't feel this is how serious government behaves. This has been a huge misalignment between federal and the state authorities. And Djokovic has paid the price and has been publicly humiliated because of it. He fulfilled all the rules, set by Australia. He didn't come up with the rules.
Novak Djokovic, the world tennis number one, has won his appeal just not so long ago this morning, meaning he's going to play in the Australian Open in Melbourne later this month. Supporters were seen celebrating outside his hotel. Lots of Serb Australians there. The tennis star was released from detention earlier. Judge Anthony Kelly came to his decision about 6 a.m, saying Djokovic wasn't given enough time to respond after authorities told him they were revoking his visa.
I have always found it very, very difficult to feel enormous sympathy for Djokovic, you know, who seems to be entitled and arrogant. And I can't stand his parents saying, you know, Serbia, bringing the whole Serbian thing into it, that whole jingoistic nonsense, it makes my blood run cold. But the Australian authorities have screwed up.
Let's be absolutely clear. Whatever you think of Djokovic's position on vaccines, he travelled to Australia in good faith with not one, but two state and Australian tennis approved exemptions from taking the vaccine. We don't know what they are. We have heard he tested positive on December the 16th, which means he has natural immunity. That was good enough for the state of Victoria. It was good enough for Tennis Australia, and it was good enough for the judge today. Now, if the federal government try and override this, they'll make themselves look ridiculous, authoritarian, and oppressive. And I think Djokovic should be an early contender for Man of the Year. His victory transcends sport. It's an absolutely phenomenal victory.
I think Nina almost fell over when you said that.
Why?
Oh, you know, I mean, this is what I feared, because, you know, when I heard the result this morning, I thought, oh my God, now what's going to happen? He's the anti-vaxxers champion. He's some kind of hero.
Not an anti-vaxxer.
You know, and he's not. He's a tennis hero. He's a sports hero.
We're going to speak to an Australian living in London now. This is Jessie.
Oh, Jessie, go on, give us the temperature. What's going on? It must be like a madhouse over there.
Yeah, hi, Jeremy. Well, I don't think this has got anything about whether or not you choose to be vaccinated or not. The rules to Australia are very clear. Djokovic has had 18 months to be vaccinated. I haven't had the opportunity for 3 years to go back and visit my family in Australia because of the quarantine and because I have children, and depending on what age they are, 12 to 15, they have to be vaccinated. That is the rules in Australia, unless there is a significant health issue as to why you are not vaccinated.
Yep.
So Djokovic having COVID in December does not negate him being vaccinated. He's had 18 months. That may negate him having a booster if that was required, if it was time for him to booster, but not to be vaccinated at all. So it's the rules. You might have a pro-choice here in the UK. That's the rules of Australia. If you can't be vaccinated and you don't want to, and you don't have a serious...
but on the technical thing, when he was about to get he was never going to get vaccinated, clearly. But he could say, well, I wanted to get vaccinated. I was about to get vaccinated to get into Australia, and then I got COVID. So blow it, I wasn't able to. Now it turns out that works as an exemption, as a loophole.
Well, then he needs to quarantine for 2 weeks, and he's going to miss the playoff.
Martin, that's not mentioned very much, is it? Once he gets into the country, he should quarantine.
Well, he's been in enforced quarantine, living with asylum seekers and refugees in decrepit conditions. He's a premier athlete on the global stage, eating slops and not being able to exercise. So he's already being punished. But as far as the caller goes here, you know, I repeat the same phrase I repeated to Nina and over. Djokovic has 2 medical exemptions that the Court of Law in Australia, in Victoria, has just approved, and so did Tennis Australia. So this is now a political battle where the federal government is going over the head of its own courts. Now, if that happened in the UK, for example, over Brexit, or if that happened in America, if Donald Trump would do it, the same people who are supporting this tyrannical overreach would be up in arms. Djokovic has obeyed the rules. He has valid exemptions, and I'm afraid that is the situation.
All right. Jessie, just one more, just because I'm not sure what's going on in Australia. Are Australians pretty cross about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolute nonsense to say it's a political thing against the Serbians, because there's so many Serbians and other nationalities. It's a multicultural society that works better than anywhere else in the world. The thing is, it was a horrendous lockdown in Victoria and the rest of Australia. I haven't been able to get back. A friend of mine's been cancelled twice, and this is unacceptable. All it does is give the message to people that you can go to Australia and totally disregard the laws there. He
All
does
right.
not have a serious medical condition where he has not need to be vaccinated. End of story.